Hi, it's Miss Donna with Raleigh Parks, Recreation and Cultural Resources. This video is part of our At Home with Nature series, Bug Safari. Do you have some favorite animals? Maybe you like hamsters or bunnies, or maybe you like bugs. Do you know bugs are animals? They are. And most bugs are smaller than mammals and birds and other creatures, but even though they're small, they can have some big powers. Got a grasshopper here. Do you know grasshoppers are great jumpers? A grasshopper can jump 20 times the length of its body in one jump. Woo! If you could jump like a grasshopper, you'd be able to jump over a car. And some bugs are real strong. I've got an ant here. It's a little creature, but it can lift things 50 times heavier than it is. So if you could lift something 50 times heavier than you, you'd be able to lift a hippopotamus. Wow. So some creatures, even though they're tiny, they can have some very big powers. And you know, we have a lot of little creatures crawling and moving around on our planet, but they're not all insects. We need to figure out what it takes for a creature to be an insect. We can start here. Insects don't have bones. What? Do we have bones? Let's check. Feel your arm. Do you have a bone on the inside? Yeah, I can feel that bumpy bone. So we have bones, but insects do not have bones. They have something else. They have something on the outside of their body. It's kind of like a miniature suit of armor. It's called an exoskeleton. It's like wearing your bones on the outside. So I'm gonna put a bone on the outside of me because I'm gonna dress up like an insect. So insects have sort of a cover or bones on the outside to protect their soft bodies. So what are their bodies like? Well, they have 3 body parts. They have a head. We've got 1 too, so we're familiar with that. But insects have a second body part attached to their head. It's called a thorax. And the thorax is the part of the body where the legs are attached. And insects have lots of legs. They have 6 legs attached to the thorax. And if an insect has wings, doesn't have to have wings, but if it does, the wings are also attached to the thorax, that second body part. Insects have a 3rd body part. It's attached to the thorax. That 3rd body part is called an abdomen. And the abdomen oftentimes has little holes on it. They're breathing holes or spiracles. So let's get this straight. Insects have bones on the outside called an exoskeleton. They have a head. They have a thorax. They have an abdomen. And they have 6 legs. But wait, there's more. Insects have something very special at the top of their heads. Maybe you know what these are. Are they antennae? Insects have antennae, and they use their antennae for feeling their way around and knowing and experiencing our world. Well, and their antennae, in addition to feeling their way around, insects can smell with their antennae. I've got a nose here. I'm gonna see if I can attach it to my antennae. Can you imagine smelling with the very top of your head? That's an interesting way of smelling, isn't it? And what about ears? Do insects have ears? No, not on their head like we have, but insects can have some ear-like parts, but they're on different parts of their body. Got an ear here, and sometimes insects have ear-like parts on their legs if they're crickets, or they can wear an ear-like part on their abdomen, on their belly. If they're a grasshopper, that's where their ear-like part would be. Wow. And what about tasting? I like to taste. Do you like to taste things? I like to taste ice cream. I like to lick ice cream from an ice cream cone. Do you do that? Sometimes I like to taste ice cream by, using a spoon in a bowl. But have you ever tasted ice cream by stepping in it? We usually don't taste food like that, but some insects taste their food by stepping in it. That's a pretty interesting way of tasting food. And some insects taste food with their antennae. Wow. So there are some creatures, they can't eat the food with their antennae, but they can taste it with their antennae. And insects will use mouth parts for taking in that food if it's a good food for them. And insects have all kinds of mouth parts. Sometimes they're chewing mouth parts, sometimes they're piercing mouth parts, sometimes they're straw-like mouth parts for slurping up flower juice. Butterflies and moths like to drink flower juice with their straw-like mouth parts. And what about eyes? Most insects have eyes. They can have eyes that are simple eyes like ours, but they can also have special eyes. And those special eyes are called compound eyes. Whoa, these are very special eyes. They let insects see lots of pictures all at the same time. Wow. And some insects have compound eyes that are so big they take up most of their head, and they wrap around their head. And even though these compound eyes, they don't let insects see things too well. They usually see things in a fuzzy way, but it lets insects know when things are coming near. They can detect motion very well. That's why it can be very hard to catch an insect. So look at this. Insects have bones on the outside, an exoskeleton. They have a head, a thorax, an abdomen, 6 legs. They have antennae. Those antennae are for smelling and for tasting and for feeling their way around. They have ear-like parts on their belly or on their legs. They have special eyes called compound eyes. But I think I'd like to see some real insects. It's fun to see Miss Donna dressed up like an insect, but I'd like to see some real insects, and I bet you would too. So I brought some real insects to show you. I've got some insects right here. See if you can guess who these are. These are beetles. I've got beetle babies, the light brown ones, and the dark brown black ones that are crawling are the grown-up beetles. They're the same creature. These light brown beetle babies or beetle larvae are going to grow up to be the very same adult beetles here. Insects can go through some big changes. They can look very different when they're young to when they're all grown up. That's called metamorphosis. I've got some metamorphosis right in my hand here. I've got some other creatures to show you. I've got another one that's going to go through some big changing. So I can find it. I found it. We see these creatures at the pond, and they go through some big changes. I've got one right here that's not all grown up yet. It's called a Dragonfly Nymph. It's going to grow up to be a grown-up dragonfly one day, and it's going to crawl out of the pond, and it'll have that beautiful bottom body part, the abdomen and lacy wings, and it's going to fly around the pond. But it's got to wait for that day to come. Right now, it's just a growing up nymph. I've also got another one here. This one's a big one. This one we don't see around here. He lives in Madagascar, which is a country near Africa. It's an island country. I see, oh my goodness, a great big cockroach here. He's got 6 legs, 3 on each side. He's an insect. He's got long antennae. Cockroaches don't have very big eyes. They move around in the dark. So they have long antennae. That lets them feel their way around in the dark. He's got holes on his abdomen, his 3rd body part. You see those holes? They're used for breathing. They're called spiracles. So yes, this guy is an insect. He's a big insect. I found another one here at the park when I came here. He crawled on my feet, and that meant that he wanted to be part of this video. So I'm going to show him to you next. He's curled up in a ball right now. He's a millipede. Wait a minute. Are millipedes insects? They're not. Too many legs. You have to have 6 legs to be an insect, remember? And millipedes, when he's all crawling around, right now he's just balled up, but when he's crawling around, he shows us lots and lots of legs. So he's related to insects, but he's not an insect. He's part of a group called the arthropods, and insects belong to that bigger group too. It's kind of like a big school, the arthropod school. To be going to the arthropod school, you need to have an exoskeleton, bones on the outside, and you need bendy legs. But when you get to school, there are different classes or classrooms, just like at school. There are different classes of arthropods, and insects are one class, millipedes are a different class. Yeah, and centipedes are a different class, and spiders are a different class. Lots of kinds of arthropods. And I've got another creature to show you. And this next creature, it's not an insect, but I wanted to bring her because she loves insects. And I wanted to show you this creature. This creature is a lizard. She's a special lizard. She's called a leopard gecko lizard. And you know what? All she eats are insects. She's an insectivore. If we didn't have insects, we would not have this creature. Insects are important in our world, aren't they? Lots of creatures eat them. There are frogs and birds, all kinds of lizards, lots of creatures eat insects. And insects are important to us as people too. You know, lots of insects pollinate or help our flowers make more flowers, make more plants. So insects are important in our world. So the next time you're outside and exploring your yard, pick up some rocks and look on some plants, see if you can find some insects. Count their legs, watch them move, and wonder and delight in their beauty. And know that they are important creatures in our world. All creatures have their place, don't they? Insects do as well.